The Apache chief lay on his mat, eyes half closed, body still as stone. Word spread quickly. He was gravely ill. His new wife knelt at his side, torn between duty and fear. But she didn't know. It was all a test. The chief wanted to see her true heart, and what she did next would leave him stunned. The fire crackled low in the chief's lodge, shadows dancing across the woven walls. Chief Nahwal lay stretched upon a blanket, his chest rising shallow, his skin pale beneath the flickering light. Outside, whispers stirred through the camp. The chief is sick. The chief may not last the night. Beside him sat Aylin, his young wife, only recently bound to him by marriage. She had not yet earned the trust of the people, nor the full weight of her place by his side. Some said she was too young, too untested. Others whispered that her spirit was strong but unproven. Nahwal heard those whispers too, and so, though his body was healthy, he chose silence and stillness. He closed his eyes and slowed his breath, pretending weakness, feigning sickness. He wanted to know, would Aylin tend him with loyalty, or abandon him when the fire dimmed? Aylin's hands trembled as she pressed a damp cloth to his brow. The air in the lodge was heavy, thick with smoke and uncertainty. She whispered, "Do not leave me, husband, not so soon." Her voice cracked, carrying more than fear. It carried the weight of someone already fighting for a place in a world that doubted her. Nahwal kept his eyes shut, listening. Every sound, every movement, every word was a measure of her truth. She rose quietly, slipping out of the lodge. Nahwal's ears strained. Was she leaving him to fate, to seek comfort elsewhere? His heart pounded, despite his act. But minutes later she returned, arms full of herbs, water and wood for the fire. She stoked the flames until warmth spread again, then crushed the herbs carefully, mixing them into a paste. She murmured words of prayer as she worked, old words she had learned from her grandmother, words Nahwal did not know she carried. Her hands moved with care, her eyes never leaving his face. She laid the paste against his chest, then cupped his hand in hers, whispering, "If the spirits wish to take you, they must take me too." Nahwal's breath caught. The strength in her voice struck him like a blade. He had set a test in secrecy, but already her answer was nothing he expected. The lodge smelled of smoke and crushed sage. Chief Nahwal lay still, his eyes closed, though every sense inside him was awake and sharp. He listened to the soft rustle of Aylin's movements, the careful way she laid wood upon the fire, the steady rhythm of her prayers whispered under her breath. She thought he could not hear. That, too, was part of the test. Outside, the camp stirred. Voices carried low in the night air, curious, doubtful. The chief is sick. The spirits are angry. Perhaps the young wife is cursed. Nahwal had known his people would whisper. He had counted on it. For a leader is not tested by peace, but by how the camp responds when his strength falters. Aylin ignored the voices. Her hands worked steadily, grinding roots into a bitter-smelling paste, mixing it with water warmed in a clay bowl. She dipped a cloth and pressed it gently to his chest. Her touch was firm, not timid, as though she had tended many before him. Nahwal felt the heat of the mixture seep into his skin. He fought the urge to open his eyes, to speak, to ask where she had learned such things. But he held still, listening. Then the flap of the lodge opened, and the air shifted. A heavier step crossed the floor. It was Elder Koa, his deep voice carrying authority. "Child," the old man said to Aylin, "you should not sit alone with him. His spirit may already be leaving. Come away." Aylin looked up, her eyes clear, though her hands never left Nahwal's chest. "No. He still breathes. While he does, I will not leave him." Koa frowned, leaning on his staff. "A wife so new to the lodge should listen. If the spirits take offense at your touch, they will take him sooner." Aylin's jaw tightened. She bowed her head respectfully, but her words cut with quiet steel. "If the spirits wished him gone, they would not need me to help. If they allow him breath still, then my place is here, keeping that breath alive." Koa studied her for a long moment, then grunted. "We will see if your strength is enough." He left without another word, but Nahwal felt the weight of the exchange. Aylin had not bent, not even before an elder. Hours passed. Aylin worked tirelessly, feeding the fire, keeping cloths cool with water from the spring, pressing them against his face and chest. She spoke often, soft words, stories of her childhood, prayers of thanks for each breath she felt beneath her palm. Nahwal's heart swelled, though he kept his body slack. He had expected duty, perhaps fear, but not devotion spoken with such conviction. As the night deepened, the lodge flap lifted again. This time it was two young warriors, their voices sharp. "Aylin," one said, "the people whisper. They say the chief is cursed with sickness. If he falls, the tribe must know why. Was it your touch that brought this upon him?" Aylin rose to her feet, small but unyielding before them. "His sickness is no curse, it is a trial. And if you doubt my hands, then stay and see what they do." The warriors exchanged glances, uneasy. One scoffed. "A woman's hands cannot turn sickness." Aylin stepped closer, her voice firm. "Then sit and watch while they try. If he breathes stronger at dawn, you will tell the people the truth, that I did not run, that I did not curse, that I stood." The warriors hesitated. Then, perhaps ashamed, they retreated. Nahwal's chest burned with both pride and shame. Pride for the courage of the woman he had doubted, shame for the trick he had laid upon her. He had thought to measure loyalty. What he found instead was strength far greater than loyalty. It was defiance against doubt, even against fear itself. Near dawn, Aylin sank to her knees beside him, exhaustion pulling at her body. She pressed her forehead to his arm, whispering, "If you leave me, I will follow. Not into death, but into the memory of you. I will fight until they see you live in me." Nahwal's heart clenched. He had wanted truth, and she had given it to him, unasked, unguarded. Outside, voices rose with the morning sun. The people gathered, waiting to hear if their chief still lived. Aylin rose again, smoothing her dress, squaring her shoulders. She looked down at him one last time, her eyes fierce with resolve. "If you rise today, they will know it was because I never let go." And for the first time, Nahwal felt his own certainty shake. His test had grown larger than he imagined. It was no longer only about his wife's devotion. It was about the spirit of his people, and whether they would follow a leader who doubted the strength already standing beside him. The morning light spilled into the lodge, turning the smoke into golden haze. Nahwal kept his body still, but his mind raced. He could hear the murmur of the people outside, a tide of voices pressing against the silence of his supposed sickness. Aylin moved with weary steadiness. Her eyes were rimmed red from the night, but her hands never faltered. She placed fresh herbs on the coals, letting their sharp scent fill the air. She spoke to him in a low voice, unaware of his ruse. "They whisper of curses, but I will not let them break me. If you rise, husband, it will be because I stood, no matter what they said." Her words cut deeper than any blade. Nahwal had thought this a simple test, a way to weigh her loyalty in private. But the test had spilled outward, into the camp, into the mouths of elders and warriors. If he stayed ill much longer, the people might begin to doubt his strength, even if he later revealed himself well. Doubt was poison to a chief. The lodge flap rustled. Elder Koa returned, leaning heavily on his staff. Behind him came two other elders, their faces grim. They carried authority heavier than any weapon. Koa's eyes swept over Aylin, then the still form of Nahwal. "The people grow restless," he said. "They ask if the new wife brought misfortune to this lodge. They ask if she should be cast out before her shadow dooms us all." Aylin straightened, her chin lifting. "I have not brought sickness. I have fought it through the night." Another elder, her voice sharp as flint, snapped, "And yet he lies still. What proof have you of your strength?" Aylin's hands curled into fists at her sides, but her voice stayed steady. "The proof is that he still breathes. If you doubt it, touch his chest. Feel what I have guarded with my own hands." The elders exchanged glances, uncertain. To accuse without proof risked dishonor. Still, suspicion lingered. Nahwal felt his pride twist. He had wanted to see Aylin stand firm, but now her defiance was protecting not just him, it was protecting his very right to lead. If he let this continue, the elders might use his illness as reason to strip him of power. But Aelin did not falter. She stepped closer to the elders, her voice rising. You think me weak because I am young. You think me cursed because I am new. But I tell you this, if he wakes, it will be because I never left his side. And if he dies, it will be because you tore him from the hands that fought for him. The lodge fell silent. Even the elders seemed shaken by the fire in her words. Koa's gaze lingered on her, heavy, measuring. At last, he muttered, We will wait until sunset. If the chief rises not by then, we will decide his fate and yours. He left, the others following, their shadows retreating from the lodge. Aelin sank back to her knees, exhaustion pulling at her, but she did not weep. She pressed a hand to Nahuel's chest, whispering fiercely, Hear me, husband. Rise, or they will take you from me. Rise, or I will face them alone. Nahuel's heart thundered. He had thought to watch, to measure her devotion from the shadows of false weakness. But now the test had turned against him. If he revealed the truth too soon, they might call him cruel, accuse him of mocking their fears. If he waited too long, the elders could claim him unfit to lead. He had set the fire, but Aelin was the one standing in its center, shielding him with nothing but her will. As the day wore on, more villagers came. Some whispered doubts, others brought food or water, testing her resolve. One young woman sneered, You waste yourself on a dying man. A wise wife would seek a stronger bed. Aelin's hand lashed out, striking the words from her lips. I am his wife, she said coldly, and I will not betray him while breath still stirs in his body. The villagers muttered, some approving, others unsettled, but none dared press further. Nahuel lay still, his mind a storm. He had meant to test her. Instead, she had tested the tribe itself, forcing them to see strength where they had expected weakness. By evening, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the camp. The elders gathered again outside the lodge, their voices heavy with judgment. Inside, Aelin knelt by the fire, her face pale but unbroken, whispering prayers over the man she believed might be dying. Nahuel's chest burned with shame. He had learned what he needed to know. More than that, he had seen the truth he could not deny. Aelin was no fragile bride to be tested. She was the spirit his people needed. But if he did not rise soon, it would not matter. The elders would make their decision, and all Aelin's defiance might not be enough to save her. He had wanted to test her heart. Now the question was whether he had the courage to reveal his own. The lodge was heavy with silence as dusk settled. The fire burned low, its glow painting Aelin's face in weary lines. She had not rested since the night before, yet her back was straight, her eyes sharp. Every time Nahuel drew in a shallow breath, she leaned closer, whispering words only he could hear. Outside, the elders' voices rumbled like distant thunder. The people had gathered, waiting for judgment. The air was thick with doubt, fear, and the hunger for certainty. A chief who did not rise might mean weakness, and weakness in the Apache lands was death. Nahuel's heart pounded. His body ached with the stillness he had forced upon it. Sweat dampened his skin, not from sickness, but from the weight of his deception. He had wanted to know the truth of his wife's spirit, but he had underestimated what that truth might cost. The lodge flap lifted. Elder Koa entered, staff tapping against the earth. Behind him came two younger warriors, their hands resting on the hilts of their blades. Their faces were carved from suspicion. Koa studied Aelin first. You stayed, he said simply. Aelin rose to her feet, small but unyielding. I swore I would not leave him. Koa's eyes narrowed. The people grow restless. Some say his spirit lingers because yours clings too tightly. Others say your shadow has cursed this lodge. At sunset, we must decide. Aelin's chin lifted. Decide what? The elder's voice was heavy. Whether you remain as wife or are cast out, so the spirits may release him. Nahuel's blood ran hot. His chest tightened with rage, but he forced his body still. He could not break his silence yet, not without unraveling everything. Aelin's voice, however, did not tremble. If you cast me out, and he dies, then his last breath will curse you, for tearing away the hands that fought for him. And if he lives, it will be because I never let go. Either way, the spirits will judge you, not me. The warriors shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between Aylin's fierce stance and the elder's dark frown. Koa's voice dropped low. Careful, child. You speak boldly for one whose place is not yet proven. Aylin's eyes burned like coals. It is proven here, in this fire, in his breath, in my hands. She pointed to Nahuel's chest. Feel for yourself, elder. He still lives. Koa hesitated. Slowly, he stepped forward and pressed a hand against Nahuel's chest. He felt the steady, faint rise of breath. His frown deepened. Yes, but weakly. Aylin leaned closer, her voice sharp as flint. Weak does not mean gone. Weak does not mean cursed. The elder studied her, then pulled his hand away. We will return at nightfall. If he has not risen, the council will decide. He turned and left, the warriors following. Aylin sank back to her knees, pressing her forehead briefly to Nahuel's arm. Her whisper shook, but only slightly. I cannot fight them much longer, husband. If you do not rise, they will tear me from you, and I will not go quietly. Nahuel's heart thundered. He had wanted to see if she would stand in the shadow of doubt. She had, fiercely, fearlessly. But now, the test threatened to destroy not only her honor, but his own. If he waited, he risked losing her forever. If he rose too soon, the elders might accuse him of trickery. The fire cracked. Outside, the people's murmurs grew louder as the sun slid lower. He could almost hear their hunger for resolution, for strength. Nahuel's pride warred with his duty. He had been chief long enough to know the people followed certainty more than truth, and the certainty now was that their leader was fading. If he let the lie continue, he might awaken to find himself no longer chief, and Aylin cast into shame. His breath quickened. Enough. The test had served its purpose. Aylin had shown her heart, and more. She had shown the spirit of a leader herself. Slowly, Nahuel let his eyelids flutter open. The lodge blurred with firelight. Aylin gasped, her hands flying to his face. You are awake!" He struggled to sit, his voice rasping though his body was strong. "Yes, awake, and I have seen what I needed to see." Aylin's eyes filled with confusion and relief all at once. You were never sick." Nahuel met her gaze, guilt tightening his chest. "No, I pretended. I needed to know your heart. If you would stand, if you would fight when all others doubted." For the first time, Aylin's face cracked with fury. "You made me beg the spirits. You let them spit curses on me. You let me burn while you lay silent." Nahuel bowed his head, shame heavy. "Yes, and for that, I ask forgiveness. But I know now, you are stronger than even I believed, stronger than they believe." Aylin's eyes burned with betrayal, but also with the fire of truth. "Then you had better rise before them, because if you do not, they will strip you of your place and me of mine." Outside, the drums began to sound, calling the council together. The moment of reckoning had come. Nahuel rose slowly to his feet, his body stiff from stillness. Aylin stood beside him, her shoulders squared, her face fierce despite the hurt in her eyes. The lodge flap lifted, and the dying sun spilled in. The people waited, the elders waited, and Nahuel knew the test was over. Now came the judgment, not of Aylin, but of himself. The drums outside beat slow and heavy, their rhythm echoing through the camp like the pulse of the earth. The people had gathered in a wide circle, faces tense, eyes fixed on the lodge. Whispers ran like wind through grass. "The chief is dying. The young wife is cursed. Tonight we will know." Inside, Nahuel stood unsteadily, his body stiff from a day and night of stillness. His chest rose with deep, steady breaths, breaths he had denied his people to keep his test alive. Aylin stood beside him, her hand clenched at her side, her eyes fierce though wounded. She had carried the weight of their judgment alone, and he knew she would not forget it soon. He touched her arm lightly. "Walk with me." Her eyes flicked to his, full of fire. "If you falter now, they will not forgive either of us. I will not falter. he said, though his stomach churned. Together, they pushed through the flap of the lodge. Gasps rippled through the crowd as Nahuel emerged, upright and strong, Aylin at his side. The murmurs shifted, surprise cutting through suspicion. Elder Koa stepped forward, leaning heavily on his staff, his eyes narrowed, suspicion sharp. "So, the chief rises at last. The people feared you gone. What sickness held you so silent?" Nahuel's gaze swept the circle. He saw doubt, fear, anger, and yet, in some eyes, relief. They had not wanted their leader to die. They had wanted certainty. He lifted his chin, his voice carrying, "No sickness held me. I lay still by choice, to test not only my wife, but the spirit of this camp." Gasps rose again, louder, sharper. Some cried out in disbelief, others muttered angrily. The elders' faces darkened, scandal writ across their lines. Aylin stiffened at his side. He felt the heat of her fury, but she said nothing. Koa's voice cracked like a whip. "You deceived your people. You let them believe their chief was dying, so you could play games with a woman." Nahuel's voice hardened. "Not games. Truth. I needed to know if my new wife carried strength enough to stand when all others doubted her. I needed to see if she would keep her place by my side, not because I commanded it, but because her spirit chose it." He turned, gesturing to Aylin. And she did. She stood against whispers, against elders, against fear itself. She never left my side. Even when you sought to drive her out, she held firm. The people murmured again, some nodding, others shaking their heads. One of the younger warriors stepped forward, voice sharp. "And what of us, Chief? We feared your death. We thought our future uncertain. You let us suffer while you played at testing her." Nahuel's eyes burned as he met the young man's gaze. "Yes, you feared. And in that fear, you showed me what weakness truly looks like. Some of you doubted her, some of you doubted me, but she alone never wavered. And if you wish to know the strength of your tribe, look at her, not at your own whispers." Aylin's breath caught. She had not expected his defense, not so openly, not after the fire of betrayal between them. The crowd shifted, their whispers rising louder. Some voices carried support. "She is strong. She did not run." Others carried anger. "The chief tricked us. He mocked our fear." Koa slammed his staff against the earth, silencing them. His voice was thunder. "A leader who deceives his people loses their trust. You played at death, Nahuel, and in doing so you endangered your place as chief." Nahuel stepped forward, his voice sharp. "And a leader who cannot test the strength of his own house is blind. Would you have me bind my life to weakness? Would you have me leave the tribe in the hands of a woman who flees at the first shadow? No. I needed truth, and I found it. Aylin is not weakness. She is fire." He turned slowly, addressing the crowd. "You call me cruel for deceiving you. Perhaps I was, but now you see what I see. My wife does not bend, she does not break, and if one day I fall, she will not let this tribe shatter. That is the strength I chose to test." The people were silent now, their eyes shifting to Aylin. She stood tall, her shoulders squared, her gaze steady. She did not speak, but the fire in her eyes carried louder than words. Koa's jaw tightened. He looked at Aylin, then at Nahuel. "The people will judge. If they accept her strength, they may forgive your deception, but if they do not, your place as chief may end here." Nahuel's heart pounded. He had put everything at risk, his honor, his wife, his leadership, and now the decision lay not in his hands, but in theirs. Aylin finally spoke, her voice clear and strong. "Judge me, then, not by whispers, not by curses. Judge me by the fact that while all of you doubted, I stayed. While all of you feared, I fought. If that is not enough, then cast me out. But know this, if he lives today, it is because I never left his side." The crowd erupted, some shouting support, others demanding punishment. The circle broke into chaos, voices clashing like thunder. Nahuel gripped his staff, his heart racing. His test had revealed truth, yes, but whether the people would embrace it or reject it remained the question that could break them all. The circle around the lodge churned like a storm. Voices clashed, anger and support rising together in a roar. Women shouted that Aelin had shown loyalty greater than most men. Some elders spat that her boldness was dangerous, that a wife who defied tradition could unravel order. Young warriors argued among themselves, torn between fear of losing face and admiration for her courage. Nahuel stood in the center, his staff planted firmly in the dust. Aelin was at his side, her hands clenched but steady, her eyes locked on the crowd. Though exhaustion weighed on her, she stood tall, unflinching. Elder Koa raised his staff, his voice booming to cut through the noise. Enough! The camp fell to uneasy silence, though murmurs still simmered. His gaze swept over the crowd, then fixed on Nahuel. The chief admits his deception. He let his people believe he was dying so he could test his wife. This is no small thing. It wounds trust. A man from the crowd shouted back, "But he lives, and because he tested her, now we know she is strong." Another voice countered, sharp with scorn. Strong or reckless? She spoke against elders. She defied the council. What place has such a woman in the lodge of a chief? Aelin's voice cut across them, calm but fierce. I did what none of you would. I stayed. I fought. I prayed when even you, elders of the tribe, doubted. If that is recklessness, then may all wives be reckless. A ripple of gasps moved through the circle. Some laughed bitterly. Others murmured approval. Koa's face darkened. You speak boldly, girl, perhaps too boldly. Nahuel stepped forward, his voice sharp. She speaks truth, and if you fear truth, perhaps it is not her place you should question, but your own. The elder's eyes burned, but he did not strike back. He lifted his staff higher. The tribe must decide. Shall this woman remain chief's wife, honored in the lodge? Or shall she be cast out, so the chief may find a wife who brings no shadow of doubt? The words hung heavy. The people shifted uneasily, looking from Nahuel to Aelin, then to one another. A young mother stepped forward, a baby strapped to her back. Her voice was clear. I saw her. I brought water at midnight, and she had not left his side. Her hands were blistered from tending the fire, her eyes raw with no sleep. She is no curse, she is strength. Another villager, an older man, spat into the dirt. Strength does not excuse defiance. A woman who strikes words at an elder may one day strike more. If the chief cannot command his own wife, how will he command us? The circle broke again into shouting. Some demanded Aelin be honored, others that she be shamed. The voices clashed until the air itself seemed to shake. Nahuel's heart pounded. He had thought his test was private, his truth his own to judge. But now his authority hung in the balance. If the people turned against Aelin, they turned against him. If they embraced her, they embraced not just her strength, but the new path it represented, one where women's voices rang as loudly as men's. He raised his staff, shouting above the noise. Enough! The camp stilled, though tension still crackled. Nahuel's voice carried strong and steady. You want judgment? Then hear mine. I am your chief. I set the test. I chose the deception. If you seek blame, blame me. But if you seek truth, look at her. She never fled. She never faltered. She faced your whispers and your curses, and still she stood. What leader among you has shown such fire? The crowd shifted. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to silence. Nahuel pressed on. If I fall tomorrow, she will stand where I could not. And if you cannot accept her beside me, then you cannot accept me as chief, because I do not walk without her. Gasps rippled. To tie his leadership to her fate was bold, dangerous. But Nahuel knew it was the only way. Koa's eyes narrowed, his staff trembling faintly in his grip. You would risk your place for her. Nahuel's voice was iron. Yes. The silence stretched, heavy as stone. Then, slowly, one young warrior stepped forward, bowing his head to Aelin. She has my respect. Another followed, then another. Soon, half the circle had lowered their eyes in quiet acknowledgement. But the other half stood rigid, whispers of dissent still strong. Koa struck his staff against the earth. The tribe is divided. A house divided cannot stand. His gaze was sharp. At dawn, the council will decide. Until then, keep your fire burning, Chief Nahuel. If it falters, so too may your place." The elders turned and left, the people dispersing into uneasy silence. Nahuel stood tall, though his heart thundered. He had bound his fate to Aelin's. At dawn, they would either rise together or fall together. Aelin turned to him, her eyes fierce, her voice low. "You played with fire. Now we both burn." Nahuel bowed his head, guilt heavy. "Yes, but in fire, steel is forged, and they will see who we truly are." The camp quieted as the last rays of sun slipped below the horizon. Fires flickered to life across the circle, their smoke curling upward like thin prayers. Yet no one truly slept. The tribe was waiting for dawn, waiting for the council's decision, waiting to see if their chief's house would stand or fall. Inside the lodge, the silence was thick. Nahuel sat upright for the first time in 2 days, his broad frame lit by the glow of the hearth. His body ached from the stillness of his deception, but the ache inside his chest was heavier. He had tested his wife, but in doing so, he had tested the trust of his people. Aelin sat opposite him. Her back straight through fatigue clung to her bones. The glow of the fire caught in her eyes, making them look like embers, fierce, unyielding. She had not spoken since the people dispersed. At last, Nahuel broke the silence. "I thought I was wise. I thought a chief must measure every soul that enters his house. But in my pride, I failed to see that the test would weigh heavier on you than on me." Aelin's gaze did not soften. "You pretended to die. You let me carry curses I did not earn. You let them spit on my name while you lay still." Her words cut deep, sharper than any blade. Nahuel bowed his head. "Yes, and for that I am ashamed." He looked up, his voice steady. "But I also saw the truth. You did not break. You stood, even when the tribe turned. You showed strength greater than I imagined." Aelin's jaw tightened. "Do you think that heals the wound?" "That my heart is soothed because you learned your lesson." Nahuel's chest burned. He reached across the fire, his hand open. "No, but I ask that you let me mend what I broke, not with words alone, but with what comes after. When dawn rises, I will not stand without you. Whatever the council says, they will see that my life and your life are bound." Aelin's eyes searched his face, fierce and searching. At last, she placed her hand in his. "Then you had better stand tall, because if you falter, I will not forgive." The fire crackled between them, sealing the vow. Outside, shadows moved. Villagers lingered near the lodge, whispering, watching. Some came close enough to leave offerings, bundles of sage, carved stones, tokens of protection. Others spat curses at the doorway, muttering that the spirits had been mocked. Every gesture was a vote cast in silence, every whisper a thread in the judgment to come. Nahuel listened, and his heart heavy. He heard a young mother whisper to her child, "The chief is strong, but his wife is stronger." He heard an old man mutter, "He tricked us, he cannot be trusted." The voices clashed, a storm that no weapon could silence. Hours passed. The fire dimmed, and Nahuel tended it himself, feeding the flames. It was the first act his people had seen him perform since he had pretended to fall ill, and some watchers murmured approval. Others scoffed. Aelin sat beside him, weaving reeds into a small braid. She handed it to him without a word. Nahuel studied it, then tied it around his wrist. A silent token, a reminder of the strength he had seen in her. Near midnight, Elder Koa approached the lodge, his staff tapping against the earth. He did not enter, but his voice carried through the flap. "Chief Nahuel, you brought this trial upon yourself. At dawn, the council will judge. If the people turn against you, will you accept their word?" Nahuel rose, his voice steady. "I will accept their judgment. But they will see not just me. They will see her, and if they cannot honor her strength, then they do not honor me." There was silence. Then Koa's staff struck the ground once. "We shall see." He walked away, leaving the night heavy once more. Aelin looked at Nahuel, her voice low. "You risk everything for me." "Why?" He met her gaze, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "Because I see now that without you, my house is hollow. My strength alone cannot carry the tribe. But with you, your fire, your defiance, we may yet walk into the storms to come." Aylin's breath caught, and for the first time since his confession, her eyes softened. "Then walk with me, but never again above me, never again pretending I must prove myself to you." Nahuel bowed his head in respect. "Beside you, always beside you." The fire burned low, but it carried them through the long night. Outside, the tribe waited, divided yet bound by the same question. Would their chief still lead them at dawn? Would the young wife be honored or cast out? When the first pale light of morning touched the sky, a drumbeat sounded. The council was ready. Nahuel rose, his staff in hand, Aylin at his side. Their shadows stretched together across the lodge wall. Whatever the judgment, they would face it not as chief and untested bride, but as one. The first drumbeat cracked the silence of dawn, echoing off the cliffs that guarded the village. One by one, the people emerged from their lodges, drawn to the open circle at the center of the camp. The air was cold, sharp with morning, but no one spoke. All eyes turned toward the chief's lodge. Nahuel stepped out into the pale light, his staff in hand. At his side walked Aylin, her face pale from exhaustion yet set with quiet fire. Together they crossed the circle's edge. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, relief at seeing him strong, anger at his deception, admiration for Aylin's defiance. At the far side of the circle, the elders waited. Elder Koa stood in the center, staff upright, his face carved with severity. Two other elders flanked him, one stern, the other troubled. Behind them, warriors lined the edges, their hands resting on weapons not for use, but as a reminder of order. Koa's voice rose, deep and unyielding. "People of the tribe, hear us. Our chief lay as though sick, though his strength was not gone. He deceived us all to test the heart of his new wife. Some call it wisdom, some call it dishonor. Today we decide." The people stirred, restless. Nahuel raised his staff, his voice steady though his chest burned with unease. "I deceived you. That is truth. I lay still, not from weakness, but to know the spirit of the woman who now shares my lodge. You deserve honesty, and here it is. I feared her untested. I feared her too young. I sought certainty, and in seeking, I wounded trust. For this, I bow my head." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A chief admitting fault was rare. Nahuel let the silence hold before he lifted his gaze, sharp as flint. "But I also found truth. Aylin did not flee. She did not falter. She defied even the whispers of curse and the scorn of elders. If strength is what we demand of a chief's wife, then she has shown it greater than any test could have asked." Aylin stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "I do not seek honor you will not give. I seek only to be judged for what I did. Not for being young, not for being new. I stayed, I fought. That is all." A young warrior near the edge shouted, "She is stronger than many of us. I saw her keep the fire through the night. Let her stand." But an older woman snapped back, "She speaks too boldly. A wife who defies elders brings danger to us all." The crowd erupted into argument again, voices clashing, until Elder Koa struck his staff hard against the earth. "Enough!" His gaze bore into Nahuel. "You say she stood strong, but you also admit you tricked us. How shall a people follow a chief who plays at death? Your leadership trembles as much as her place does." Nahuel lifted his staff higher. "Then bind my fate to hers. If you cannot honor her, then strip me as well. But know this, if you cast her out, you cast me out too. For I will not lead without the woman who proved herself when you doubted." The words fell heavy as stones. Gasps rippled through the circle. Some shouted in support, others in anger. To tie his leadership to her was dangerous, perhaps reckless. Yet the fierceness in his voice carried weight none could deny. The elders exchanged glances. One of them, the oldest woman of the council, spoke at last, her voice softer but cutting through the noise. "The chief's wife is untested no longer. We all saw her courage, and we all saw his fault. Perhaps the spirits wish to show us that strength wears many forms, even in those we doubt." Koa's jaw tightened. "And if we forgive this, if we honor her, what lesson do we teach? That deception is a tool of leaders." The old woman's gaze was steady. "Or that truth can rise from fire, even if born of mistake." The people murmured again. this time more thoughtful, less divided. Some bowed their heads, others looked to Aylin with new respect. Nahuel felt the shift. He raised his staff one final time. Judge us as one. If I must carry shame, I carry it. But she carries no shame. She carries only fire. If you cannot see that, then perhaps it is not she who is unworthy, but me. The silence stretched long. Then, slowly, the people began to strike their hands against their thighs in rhythm, a gesture of assent, of unity. It spread through the circle, louder, steadier, until the whole camp beat as one. Elder Koa's face was thunderous, but even he could not silence the sound. He struck his staff once, a gesture of reluctant acceptance. So be it. The tribe has spoken. She remains. And you, chief, must bear the weight of what you have done. Nahuel bowed his head. I will. Aylin stood tall beside him, her hand brushing his briefly. In the fire of dawn, with the people's rhythm echoing around them, she was no longer merely his wife. She was part of his leadership, visible, undeniable. But though the verdict had been given, Nahuel knew the battle was not over. Trust once cracked takes long to mend. And Aylin, though vindicated, had not forgotten the wound he dealt her. The tribe dispersed slowly, whispers lingering in the morning air. Some still doubted, some still scorned. But many more looked with new eyes, at her, at him, at what they had endured together. And as the circle emptied, Nahuel felt it in his bones. The test was no longer his. It had become theirs. The circle broke slowly, like a storm reluctant to pass. People drifted back toward their lodges, some with relief in their faces, others with bitterness burning in their eyes. The drum beats faded, replaced by the everyday sounds of camp, children calling, fires being stoked, horses stamping in the dust. Yet beneath it all, an undercurrent remained. The tribe had chosen, but not all were at peace with the choice. Nahuel stood tall, his staff firm in the earth, but his heart carried a weight heavier than stone. The cheers of support still rang faintly in his ears, yet he caught the sidelong glances of those who had shouted against him. Their mouths were silent now, but silence often carried more danger than words. Aylin walked beside him back to the lodge. She kept her head high, her steps steady, though inside she felt the eyes of the camp pressing into her back. Every look was a judgment, some filled with respect, others dripping with suspicion. Inside the lodge, the fire was low, its embers glowing. Nahuel sank onto the mat, his body aching. Aylin busied herself with tending the flames, feeding them carefully until warmth spread again. Neither spoke for some time. The silence between them was no longer cold, but it was heavy, like a wound waiting to heal. At last, Aylin broke it. They chose, but not all believe. You saw their faces. Nahuel nodded slowly. Yes, some hearts will take time. Others may never bend. Aylin turned, her eyes sharp. Then what happens when they test me again? When the next sickness comes or the next hardship, will they whisper curses once more? Nahuel met her gaze. Perhaps. But now they cannot claim ignorance. They saw you. They cannot deny what you did. Aylin shook her head, frustration flickering. They may deny anything if it suits their fear. Her words rang true. Nahuel leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. Then we meet their fear with strength, not in whispers, but in deeds. If they watch you, let them see your fire again and again until their whispers choke in their throats. Aylin looked at him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod, yet her voice carried a quiet edge. If they test me again, I will not stand alone. You will not lay still this time. Nahuel's chest tightened with shame. Never again. You have my word. That night, the lodge filled with visitors. First came a group of young women, carrying baskets of food. One of them, eyes wide with awe, said softly, "We saw how you stood, Aylin. You gave us courage." They left the food by the fire and slipped out. Later, 2 warriors entered, heads bowed. "Chief," one said, "we doubted her. We spoke against her, but we saw her fire. We ask forgiveness." Nahuel gestured toward Aylin. "Do not ask me. Ask her." The men turned to her. their faces solemn. Aylin studied them for a moment, then nodded. "Do not speak against me again, unless your hands can match what mine have done." The warriors lowered their heads in silence, then left. But not all who came bore gifts or apologies. Near midnight, an older woman slipped into the lodge, her face lined with bitterness. She spat at the fire, her voice sharp. "You brought shame on us all. You let a woman's defiance shake the council. The spirits will punish this tribe for your arrogance." Nahuel rose sharply, staff in hand. But Aylin lifted her own chin, stepping forward. "If the spirits wish to punish me, they may strike me now. Yet here I stand, still breathing, still unbroken. Go, and tell the others I am not afraid." The old woman's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing more. She turned and left, her mutterings fading into the night. When the lodge was quiet again, Nahuel looked at Aylin, pride and worry tangled in his chest. "You spoke with fire, but fire burns as well as it warms. Some will not forget your words." Aylin's voice was calm. "Let them remember. If they see me as fire, then they will know I cannot be extinguished." Nahuel sat back slowly, studying her. He had meant to test her once, but now he understood. She would be tested many times, not by his will, but by the weight of a people slow to accept change. And yet, he felt no fear. He felt only the certainty that she was strong enough to endure it. As dawn gave way to day, life in the camp resumed. Children played, hunters prepared to ride, women gathered at the stream. Yet beneath the ordinary, the memory of the night before lingered. Some nodded respectfully to Aylin when she passed. Others turned away. The camp was not whole, but it had shifted. Nahuel knew unity would not come in a single night. Trust must be rebuilt step by step. But one truth had become unshakable. Aylin was no longer untested. She had earned her place, whether the tribe admitted it easily or not. And as he watched her move through the camp, head held high despite the eyes upon her, Nahuel felt a weight lift from his chest. His deception had nearly cost him everything, but it had also revealed something he could never again deny. The strength beside him was not borrowed. It was her own, and with it, perhaps the tribe could weather storms yet to come. The days after the council's judgment passed in uneasy quiet. Outwardly, life returned to routine. Hunters rode out at dawn, women gathered at the stream, children played in the dust. But beneath the surface, tensions simmered. The camp was no longer united. Some looked at Aylin with newfound respect, others with suspicion that burned hotter with each passing day. Nahuel sensed it in every glance, every hushed conversation that stopped when he entered. Trust was fragile. One spark could shatter what little balance had been restored. One evening, as the firelight cast long shadows, two young warriors lingered near the edge of the lodge. Their whispers carried, sharp despite the attempt at secrecy. "She shamed the elders," one muttered. "If she rises higher, what place will be left for us?" "Perhaps none," the other replied. "Some already call her stronger than the chief. If we do nothing, she will rule us all." Nahuel's hand tightened on his staff. He wanted to confront them, to silence their poison with his own voice. But Aylin, seated nearby, shook her head. "Let them speak," she said quietly. "Words show the hearts of men. If they plot, their steps will reveal it." Her calm unsettled him. "And if their steps strike against you?" Aylin's eyes met his, steady. "Then I will meet them, as I met the whispers before, standing." The following day, a new test arrived. The tribe gathered near the riverbank where water flowed low. Hunters returned empty-handed, complaining that game had grown scarce. The people murmured that the land itself was angry. It was the perfect soil for doubt to take root again. When Elder Koa rose, leaning on his staff, the circle grew silent. His voice was heavy. "The land withholds its gifts. Perhaps it is a sign that the spirits are displeased. Perhaps we chose wrongly in the council." All eyes turned toward Aylin. The old wound reopened in an instant, and whispers swelled. Nahuel's heart burned. He started forward, but Aylin raised her hand. She stepped into the circle herself, her voice clear. "The land does not punish us for truth. The land gives and takes by its own will. If game is scarce, Then we must work harder, not blame shadows. Koa's eyes narrowed. And what would you do, young wife, when the bellies of children cry? Pray harder. Defy the spirits again. Aelin met his gaze without flinching. I would lead the women into the hills. I would set traps, gather roots, teach the children to find food where others see only dust. The land may be harsh, but it is never empty. If you call this defiance, then I call it survival. A murmur rose, some impressed, some angered. One of the young warriors who had whispered against her stepped forward, sneering. Bold words, but words fill no stomach. Show us, then. Prove you are more than a tongue that spits fire. Aelin's chin lifted. Very well. At dawn I will go. Those who doubt may follow. Nahuel's chest clenched. You do not need to prove yourself again. They will twist any deed to suit their hate. But Aelin's eyes burned. I do not prove myself for them. I prove myself for the children who go hungry. If the tribe will not believe words, then let them see deeds. True to her vow, at dawn she rose, gathering a small group of women and children. Some came out of respect, others out of curiosity, a few out of spite, hoping she would fail. Nahuel wanted to ride with her, but Aelin stopped him at the edge of camp. This is not your test, she said softly. It is mine. He gripped her hand tightly. Then return to me, no matter what. She nodded, then disappeared into the hills. The hours dragged. Nahuel waited by the lodge, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Whispers rippled through the camp. She will fail, the spirits will shame her. Others whispered hope. By afternoon, unease turned sharp. Koa himself walked the camp, murmuring that Aelin's pride had led her astray. But as the sun dipped low, figures appeared in the distance. Aelin walked at the front, her back straight, her arms heavy with bundles of roots, herbs, and game caught in traps. Behind her, the women carried baskets full, children smiling through dust-streaked faces. Gasps rose as the camp gathered. Aelin dropped the bundles at the council's feet. The land is not empty, she said, her voice steady. It gives to those who know where to look, and to those who refuse to despair. Silence followed, broken only by the cries of hungry children as food was passed. Mothers wept in relief. Even some warriors lowered their heads, ashamed. Nahuel's heart swelled as he stepped to her side. You doubted her. You doubted me. Yet she fed you when your own hands brought nothing. Tell me, who is cursed now? The tribe was quiet, their judgment shifting like sand in the wind. Some still glared with resentment, but many more bowed their heads in respect. Elder Koa's jaw tightened, but even he could not deny what lay before him. The people have eaten, he said stiffly. For that we are grateful. But remember, strength breeds envy. The spirits test us all. Aelin met his gaze coolly. Then let them test me again. I will not bend. That night, the fires burned brighter, bellies filled for the first time in days. Yet, in the shadows of camp, Nahuel saw the warriors who had whispered against her, their faces hard, their eyes narrow. Respect had been earned, but so had deeper resentment. He knew what Aelin did not say aloud. Every victory made her stronger in the eyes of the tribe, but also painted a larger target on her back. The camp was quieter after the hunt Aelin had led, bellies filled, spirits lifted. Yet Nahuel knew peace was only the surface. Beneath, resentment smoldered. A woman who fed the tribe when hunters failed. Some saw it as a blessing, others as humiliation. And humiliation, in warriors' hearts, often hardened into hate. By the third night, whispers thickened like smoke. Nahuel heard them at the edge of fires, caught them in the restless glances of young men. She makes him weak. She shames us. If he will not silence her, we must... Aelin sensed it too. One evening she sat by the lodge fire, weaving reeds into thin cords. Her face was calm, but her voice was quiet steel. They plot. I hear it in their steps. Nahuel's jaw tightened. Then I will call them before the council. Expose their cowardice. Aelin shook her head. If you do, they will say you shield me like a child. Let them show themselves. When their hands strike, let all see who they truly are. Her defiance stirred pride in him, but fear as well. And if they strike true? She met his gaze steadily. then I will not fall easily. That night, Nahuel posted trusted guards near the lodge, but still sleep came slow. His dreams were restless, shadows closing in, Aylin's fire swallowed by silence. The attack came not at night, but at dawn. As the tribe stirred, 3 young warriors strode into the lodge without permission, their hands heavy with anger. The tallest sneered. "Chief, the people whisper that your wife's place grows larger than yours. If you will not prove her weak, then we will." Aylin rose slowly, her eyes burning. "If you doubt me, face me openly. Not with whispers, not with cowards' words. Here now." The men laughed harshly. One spat at the fire. "You are no warrior. You are a mouth that knows only defiance." Nahuel's hand gripped his staff, fury surging. "Enough! You dare dishonor my lodge?" But Aylin's hand touched his arm lightly. "No! Let them come!" The tallest warrior lunged, grabbing her wrist. In an instant, Aylin twisted free, her reed cord flashing as she looped it around his arm and yanked, pulling him off balance. He crashed into the dirt, stunned. The others rushed forward, but she moved like the fire she was named for, swift, unyielding. She struck one across the face, snatched his knife, and held it firm before his chest. The camp erupted as people gathered at the commotion. Mothers pulled children close, warriors shouted, elders hurried forward. Nahuel stepped into the circle, staff raised, his voice cracked like thunder. "Enough. You came here to shame her, and instead you shamed yourselves." The fallen warriors scrambled to their knees, faces twisted with rage and humiliation. One spat, "She defies tradition. If you let her rise higher, we will not follow." Nahuel's eyes burned. "Then go. Leave this camp if your pride is greater than your people's hunger, for she fed you when you failed. She stood when you fled, and if you cannot honor that, you are no warriors of mine." Gasps rippled through the crowd. To cast men out was no small thing. It meant exile, shame, and often death. The warriors' faces paled, but their anger did not fade. Elder Koa stepped forward, his voice heavy. "Chief, this path is dangerous. Exile breeds enemies, and a chief who casts out his own weakens his roots." Nahuel's jaw tightened. "Better a few enemies outside than poison festering inside," the crowd murmured. Some nodded, others looked uneasy. Aylin's voice rose, clear and sharp. "Do not exile them, husband. Let them stay. Let all see them for what they are. If they wish to prove strength, let them do it with deeds, not with striking women in the shadows." The words cut deeper than any punishment. The warriors' faces twisted with shame as the people stared. To remain meant living under the weight of her truth. To leave meant dishonor. Either way, Aylin had won. Nahuel looked at her, awe stirring in his chest. She had chosen the sharper blade, not vengeance, but exposure. Koa's eyes narrowed. "You see now? Even mercy she claims as power. One day, Chief, you may find she casts a shadow longer than yours." Nahuel met his gaze coldly. "Then it is a shadow I welcome. For without her, I would stand alone. And a leader who stands alone cannot lead." The crowd was silent, the weight of his words settling. Slowly, people drifted back to their fires, whispers shifting from suspicion to respect. The 3 warriors lingered, their pride torn. They did not speak again that day. When night fell, Nahuel sat beside Aylin at the fire, his voice low. "You shamed them without blood. That is harder than any blade." Aylin's eyes softened, though her voice stayed firm. "It is not shame I seek. It is survival. If they cannot see me as wife, then they will see me as fire, and fire, once seen, is not forgotten." Nahuel reached for her hand, his voice rough. "I tested you once, and nearly lost you. Now the world tests you, and I see your strength was never mine to measure, it is yours alone." She squeezed his hand lightly. "Then walk beside me, husband. No longer as judge, but as equal." The fire crackled between them, casting their shadows together against the lodge wall. Outside, the camp was quieter. Yet Nahuel knew the truth. Peace had not been restored, only postponed. Enemies could be silenced, but envy was harder to kill. And as he watched Aylin's face lit by the flames, he knew one thing with certainty. Her place beside him was no longer a question. It was destiny. The nights grew colder, and with them the whispers sharper. The three warriors who had tried to shame Aylin stayed in camp, but their pride burned hotter with every passing day. Nahuel watched them from afar, noting how they gathered others, men unsettled by Aylin's strength, elders wary of her defiance, even a few women who feared change. The tribe was no longer merely divided, it was on the edge of breaking. One evening, as the moon rose bright and silver, the challenge came. Drums beat suddenly in the center of camp, harsh and insistent. People poured from their lodges, voices rising in confusion. At the heart of the circle, the tallest of the disgraced warriors stood with a spear planted in the earth. His voice rang out, sharp as a blade. "Chief Nahuel, we will not follow a house ruled by a woman's tongue. If you will not cast her aside, then face us and prove your strength. Tonight before the tribe we decide if you are still fit to lead." Gasps rippled through the crowd. No one challenged the chief lightly. It meant risk of exile, even death. Yet here the challenge stood, bold and unflinching. Nahuel strode forward, staff in hand, his shoulders broad, his eyes burning. "You shame yourselves again. This is not about me. This is about the woman you cannot defeat with whispers," the warrior sneered. "Then let her fight. If she claims fire, let her burn in the circle." Aylin stepped into the light before Nahuel could answer, her eyes steady, her voice calm but unyielding. "If it is me you fear, then face me. Not with whispers, not with curses. Here, where all can see." The people erupted into chaos, some shouting for her to step back, others urging her forward. Elder Koa raised his staff, his voice heavy. "This is no small thing. If she enters the circle, it is as more than wife. It is as warrior, and if she falls alone." Nahuel's hand shot out, gripping her arm. "No, this is my fight, my test." But Aylin's gaze locked with his, fierce and steady. "You tested me once, husband. Now the tribe tests me again. If I step back, they will say I hid behind you. If I fall, then let it be on my feet, not in your shadow." Her words struck deep, louder than the drums. Nahuel's throat tightened. At last, he let his hand drop. "Then I stand with you, whatever comes." The circle formed. Torches cast long shadows. The fire crackled high, and the people pressed in, eyes wide. The warrior stepped forward, spear in hand, his grin cruel. Aylin faced him with nothing but a knife and the fire in her stance. The fight began in a blur. The warrior lunged, his spear thrusting fast. Aylin twisted aside, the point grazing her arm. Gasps rose, but she did not falter. She darted close, her knife flashing, striking the shaft of his spear, forcing him back. The crowd roared, the sound swelling like thunder. Some shouted for the warrior, others for Aylin. Nahuel stood at the edge, every muscle taut, his chest aching with pride and fear. The warrior swung again, wide and reckless. Aylin dropped low, rolling beneath the blow, rising with her blade pressed against his ribs. The crowd fell silent. She could have ended it there, but instead she stepped back, lowering her knife. Her voice rang clear. "You sought to shame me. Instead, you shamed yourself. If you strike again, it will be the last time." The warrior's face twisted with rage. He lunged once more, reckless. Aylin sidestepped, caught his wrist, and in a single motion twisted until the spear fell from his grasp. She flung it into the dust, her knife at his throat. The camp erupted, some with gasps, others with cheers. The warrior froze, his pride bleeding into the dirt. Slowly, Aylin lowered her blade, her eyes never leaving his. "You live tonight not because you are strong, but because I show mercy. Remember it." She stepped back. The warrior staggered, humiliated. No one moved to support him. His followers lowered their eyes, shame spreading like fire. Nahuel strode into the circle, staff raised high. His voice cracked like thunder. "You doubted her. You doubted me. Now you see the truth with your own eyes. This woman is no curse, she is strength. And if you cannot honor her, then you cannot honor me. From this day forward, her fire is my fire. Her word is my word. Together we lead." The people roared, a sound that shook the night. Some still looked uneasy, but the tide had shifted. Aylin's victory was undeniable, her fire too bright to ignore. Elder Koa watched in silence, his eyes dark, his staff heavy in his hands. At last he spoke, his voice low but carrying. "The spirits have spoken through her strength. The council will not oppose. But remember, Chief, fire that burns too bright can consume as well as warm." Nahuel met his gaze, his voice steady. "Then let it burn, for it is fire that forges us." The circle broke with cheers and murmurs, the tribe spilling back to their fires. Nahuel turned to Aylin, his chest heavy with both pride and awe. He cupped her face, whispering, "You stood where many men would fall. You are more than I ever dreamed." Aylin's eyes softened, though her voice was firm. "Then never doubt me again." He nodded, his heart short. Never. That night the camp's fires burned higher than before, their light carrying into the dark. For the first time, Nahuel felt not just that Aylin had proven herself, but that the tribe itself had begun to see her as something more than wife, something that could change their future. Yet in the shadows, beyond the firelight, Nahuel sensed unease. Some eyes still burned with resentment. And he knew. Victory was never the end. It was only the beginning of another trial. The dawn after Aylin's victory felt unlike any other. The camp was alive with talk, voices buzzing as if the earth itself had shifted during the night. Children replayed the fight with sticks and laughter. Women spoke her name with admiration, and even some warriors, though grudging, could not deny what they had seen. Aylin had faced steel and pride with nothing but her fire, and she had not bent. Yet Nahuel knew not all hearts had changed. Power never moved without resistance. Some of the tribe's oldest voices still whispered, "Too bold, too dangerous." But whispers no longer mattered as they once had. Aylin's strength was now carved into memory, and memory cannot be erased. The council called a gathering at midday. The circle filled quickly, the tribe pressing in, eager to hear what would come next. Nahuel walked to the center, staff in hand, Aylin at his side. She did not hide in his shadow, she stood equal, her gaze steady, her posture unyielding. Elder Koa rose first, his staff striking the earth. His face was grave. "We saw her stand. We saw her mercy. The spirits have shown their hand. But a question remains. What place has she now? Is she only wife or something greater?" The camp murmured, divided. Some shouted, "Wife and warrior." Others muttered that a woman should not claim more than her lodge. Nahuel lifted his staff, his voice cutting through the noise. "She is wife, yes, but more than that. She is fire in this camp. When hunters returned empty, she fed us. When whispers grew sharp, she silenced them with strength. When pride challenged her, she fought and showed mercy. If a leader is measured by what they give, then she has given more than most here." He turned, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "You call me chief because I guide you, but I will not guide you alone. From this day, Aylin stands beside me, not behind me. Her word carries with mine. Her strength is ours." The declaration cracked across the circle like thunder. Gasps rose. Some nodded in fierce approval, others stiffened in shock. Elder Koa's face darkened. "You risk much, Nahuel. To share power is to divide it." Aylin's voice rose before Nahuel could reply, calm but burning. "Power divided is not weakened, it is doubled. I do not seek to steal his place. I seek to hold it with him, so it does not fall when storms come. If that frightens you, perhaps it is not me you fear, but the change you cannot stop." Her words rippled through the crowd, striking deep. Women straightened their backs, men exchanged uneasy glances. Young ones listened wide-eyed. Silence followed, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Then a young hunter stepped forward, voice loud. "She is right. I doubted her once, but she fed my children when I brought nothing. If her word stands with the chiefs, then I follow." Others echoed him, one after another. A rhythm began, hands striking thighs, voices rising. "With them! With them!" Nahuel felt the shift. It was not unanimous, but it was strong, strong enough to bind the tribe's spirit again. He raised his staff high. "Then it is decided, not by me, not by the council, but by the people. We walk forward together, as one. The circle roared, the sound carrying into the sky. Even Koa, though grim, did not strike his staff again. He knew resistance now would be drowned by the wave Aelin had set in motion. Nahwal turned to Aelin, pride burning in his chest. For the first time, he saw not just his wife, not just the woman he had doubted, but the partner the tribe itself had chosen. As the people dispersed, Aelin stood with him at the fire, her voice low. You tied your place to mine once. Now the tribe has done the same. That bond cannot be undone. Nahwal touched her hand, his voice rough. And I would not undo it, even if I could. For the first time since the deception began, Aelin allowed herself a small smile, not of triumph, but of something quieter, acceptance. That night, the fires burned higher than ever. Songs rose, children danced, and for the first time in many moons the camp felt whole. Yet Nahwal knew this was no ending. Power always carried weight, and Aelin's rise would bring challenges as surely as the sun brings heat. But as he watched her among the people, speaking, laughing, standing tall, he felt no fear. He felt only certainty. The test he had begun in secrecy had grown into something greater than he could ever have imagined. It had tested her, him, and the tribe itself. And from the fire, something new had been forged, not just a chief and his wife, but two flames, burning side by side, strong enough to light the path ahead. The days that followed carried a different rhythm. The camp still bustled with the same daily tasks, fires tended, children taught, hunts prepared, but the undercurrent had shifted. Where once Aelin had been an untested bride, she now walked through the camp with heads bowing, voices softening in respect. Women came to her with questions. Men acknowledged her presence even when pride stiffened their spines. She was no longer invisible, no longer doubted. She was part of the tribe's spirit. Nahwal felt it too. When he spoke, people listened as before. But now, when Aelin spoke, they listened as well. And sometimes, he noticed, they listened harder. It might have stung another man, but Nahwal only felt pride. For what is a leader's strength, if not measured by the strength he chooses to walk beside him? At the evening fire, Aelin often gathered children and taught them small things. How to weave cords, how to listen for the sound of water beneath stone, how to see tracks others missed. She did not claim wisdom beyond her years, yet what she shared was always practical, always laced with quiet courage. The children adored her, the mothers praised her, and the men, though slower, began to see the value of her fire. Still, not all hearts were won. Elder Koa remained cautious, his gaze heavy whenever it fell on her. Some warriors still muttered that too much strength in a woman upset the balance of tradition. Yet even they could not deny what had happened. A truth once seen cannot be unseen. Nahwal often reflected on the path that had led them here. His pride had nearly cost him everything. Her trust, his people's faith, his place as chief. Yet in that trial, the tribe had been forced to confront its own doubts. And Aelin had not only survived the test, she had transformed it. One night, as the stars spread bright across the sky, Nahwal and Aelin sat together outside their lodge. The camp was quiet. Most fires burned low. Nahwal's voice was low, thoughtful. I meant to test you, but it was the tribe that was tested, and me most of all. I thought myself wise, but wisdom does not come from deceiving. It comes from facing truth, even when it shames you. Aelin looked at him, her face softened by the firelight. And you faced it. That is why they still follow you. You admitted fault, and they saw a man who can bend before he breaks. That is strength. He shook his head slightly, a faint smile tugging his lips. No, Aelin. The strength they saw was yours, and it saved me as much as it saved them. She was quiet for a moment, then leaned closer, her voice soft. Then let us never test each other again. Let us only walk together, side by side. If storms come, we will stand as one. Nahwal placed his hand over hers, the gesture sealing more than words could. As one, he agreed. The tribe did not change overnight. Some still clung to old ways, some still whispered doubt. But every day Aelin's presence grew harder to deny. Her deeds spoke louder than whispers, her courage steadier than fear. In time, The memory of her trial became legend. The story of the night when the chief lay still and the young wife held the fire alone. It was told to children as a tale of loyalty and strength. It was whispered in times of hardship as a reminder that even in doubt, one spirit can carry many. And for Nahuel, it became the lesson of his life, that true leadership is not measured by control, but by the courage to share it. As the seasons turned, storms came and passed, hunts failed and succeeded, quarrels rose and were mended. But through it all, Aylin remained, steadfast, fierce and unbroken. She had been tested in fire and had emerged not only as wife, but as flame. And Nahuel, once proud and blind, learned that the fire beside him did not dim his light, it made it burn brighter. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful tales of courage, loyalty, and unexpected strength. And if you want to keep walking this path with us, watch the next story waiting for you. It may just change how you see resilience forever.